If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
Joining me now is UFO investigator Margaret Fry. After having her first close encounter in Kent 1955, Margaret has devoted her life to searching for the truth and has researched UFO reports throughout England and Wales. She is the co-founder of the Welsh Fellowship of Independent Ufologists, which has been investigating UFO activity for over 20 years. Margaret has also written 2 books. Her latest book, Linked to the Stars, details in depth her many years of researching the UFO phenomena. Margaret Fry, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Margaret, for our audience here, you're one of the longest-serving ufologists in the UK, and would you say it's been almost 46 years now? Is that
46 years, yes.
46 years, and where is it taking you to your present state of belief in the idea of ufology? How do you understand it?
I think that alien craft are coming to our planet, but they don't come any further than our own universe because the distances are too great, and they are very similar to us insofar as they've got arms, legs, bodies, heads, and I think that they're subject to the same restrictions that we'd have with space travel. So that's what makes me feel that they come only from perhaps some of the satellites of Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, places,
So after all these years, you've basically had that same belief for a long time, haven't you? After all the years of research you've done.
Yes, I do.
Because other UFOologists, they would say, well, maybe they're interdimensional, for example.
Yeah, no, I don't think of all those things because really I don't understand them, to be truthful. But I think this is a simpler explanation, and I would say that I'm right, but I mean, I can't say for certain. I'm not dogmatic about it.
So what was the key part in your life where this whole ufology started for yourself? What was the key event to happen?
Well, that was in 1955, the 17th of July, I remember the date exactly, on a Sunday, midday. And I was going up to the surgery with my doctor to get medication for my son who was ill with sunstroke. And this object followed us over the car and kept stalling it until we turned onto a side avenue, and the shadow of this thing turned with us. And when we got onto this next road, which was called Ashbourne Avenue in Bexley Heath, Kent, the car stalled altogether, and we got out of the car, and there was this thing 18 feet above our heads. And after a bit, it started to spin, and it flipped up and then flipped down, and it landed at the crossroads just a few yards ahead of us. And then we all got out of the car, and we went and stood around it, including some children on the pavement. And I would say they were round about the ages of 8 to 10. So I'd love one of those children, if they're watching your program, to come forward and say, I was there.
So there were no engine noises?
There was no sound whatsoever from it. It just hovered just off the ground, and then it gradually rose to about 4 or 5 feet off the ground, where it stood still for about 7 minutes.
So what kind of colour was it? I mean...
Well, the colour was, I could describe as pewter. It was quite dull, but at the same time it would shine, I suppose, when the sun was shining, because it was a very hot day, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. And I would have said that it was a mixture of blue, silver, that type of colour, but not really a hue that we get here.
And Well, I mean, did you touch it at all? Or?
No, nobody touched it,
Why
and I'm
not?
glad we didn't.
Why not?
Because later on in my investigations and, you know, meeting up with people who did have close encounters like me with UFOs, I found that they were really harmed. In fact, one case I had in Northampton, the young man died 8 months after touching one of these things. So I'm glad that none of us dared to touch it.
So, what was your state of mind, and the doctor as well, someone highly educated? What were you both thinking at the time? Were you both looking at each other aghast?
We were both so aghast at the idea, you know, that we instinctively felt that it didn't come from our planet. It wasn't any secret craft. I don't think we were sufficiently advanced then in 1955 to have anything like that. And then it gradually wobbled from side to side until it was about 100 feet up. And then a porthole opened out. And I remember thinking then, oh my God, there were people in that. And the next thing it had gone whoosh, and it was up to about 30-odd foot with 30,000 feet within a matter of seconds.
It takes a lot to get your head around this, doesn't
Yeah.
it? I mean, you know, a lot of people would say, well, you know, you could have just imagined it. But then again, you had so many other witnesses at that particular time.
That's the main thing. I had my young son, although his memory is now fading because he was only a little boy. I had the doctor, and he reported it to the British Medical Board. Although doctors were so autocratic in those days, they never bothered to include me in it. And then, of course, much later, through a very good investigator from the Midlands, John Hanson, a retired policeman, we found that there was a second one that landed 4 roads away. On the main road, yes, at the same time.
So there were 2 in the same vicinity. And
yeah.
You only found this out at a later date, was it? I mean, we're talking years later when this information came about?
This information only came to us in 2005.
2005.
And he found several witnesses there too, and there were about 130 people standing around that craft because they all came out to their houses and stood around it.
And did they describe the same looking craft?
No, it was quite different. It was sort of triangular altogether.
Triangular?
Yeah.
Very unusual for that.
Yeah, it would be better to show the picture of it really, you know, but it's difficult to describe.
Okay.
But it didn't look anything like the George Adamski type of one that we saw.
And George Adamski, for the people that don't know out there, he's a famous UFOologist, is that right?
No, he was made famous because he really was able to publicize his what he had seen, and he took a lot of photographs as well, and the photographs were identical really to what I saw.
Okay. So did you get to see the report of the doctor as well, the doctor's report that he handed in?
No, nothing. I never heard of him again. And when I finally asked my own doctor about it, he told me this. And he said, I'll try and chase him for you. And he did. He traced him back to India. He was an Indian. And he found, unfortunately, that he had died of a brain hemorrhage eight months before.
Right, okay. And had he talked to his colleagues about what he'd seen that day? Did he?
Yes, he did. He told the whole of the 3 or 4 doctors that he was in practice with. He told them all about it.
And again,
because they all mentioned it to me in later years.
And did that sort of reinforce that you wasn't just hallucinating? You had actually seen this. This was a real event.
Doctors, all the doctors in the practice just accepted it because this doctor told them about it.
So
and when I told them about what I felt, they accepted it.
And you mentioned your son Steve was there at the time as well.
Yeah, he was only little.
again, can he recall his memory nowadays and think, well, there was something a bit odd about what he's seen then? I mean, does he believe in ufology?
He had heard the doctor exclaiming, I think it's some American secret craft, you know. And this stuck in his little mind. And he said it was only when he grew up and he read about UFOs that he actually realized that it wasn't, that it was a UFO.
Yes, because I mean, back in 1955, from what you're describing,
yeah.
I mean, what could have gone at that sudden speed and it hovered without, you know, the engine sounds
impossible. I don't think we didn't have.
engine.
We were just recovering from the war. Don't forget, you know, parts of London were still in ruins and they hadn't rebuilt. We were given martial aid by the Americans, and it took a very long time recovering from that the World War II.
So, when you had this experience then, immediately the years following, where did it take you?
Well, to start off with, not at all, because I had to bring up my children on my own. I had 4 children, three sons and a daughter. And it was only about 10 years later that I saw a bit in the newspapers about the organisation being founded in London, called Bufora, and they were holding meetings at Caxton Hall, and then I went up and you know, to see them, and then after that I joined them, and I used to investigate for them as well. That was the first time I ever investigated for another, you know, for a group, because prior to that I'd been doing it all on my own.
I mean, obviously, you must have realised we weren't alone.
That's right. Because for one thing, I wasn't alone in seeing that UFO, because the first thing I did was to try and make sense of my own sighting. And I asked people if they'd ever seen anything, and they all said on the 17th of July, 1955. I had so many witnesses to that. Not just where I was, but the craft being seen in towns roundabout in Kent.
And with the craft that you saw, obviously you say a number of people witnessed this craft, but I mean, you say you saw it leave suddenly. You must have seen the underneath of it. I mean, was this a sealed kind of craft? Was there anything conventional on it that you could have said, well, oh, that makes sense, that there's something conventional there that
I couldn't see underside of it because it was tilted towards us all the time it was going up. I didn't see the underside, but I did see the underside of it when it was first over the car, about 18 foot above our heads.
And was it rivets or bolts?
No, there were 3 ball-bearing like wheels which came down, and I was really afraid that it was going to land on us, but then they retracted. And it was smooth as far as I remember. You know, the underside was smooth apart from that.
Okay, Margaret, well, after the break, we'll get more into your amazing cases that you've studied in depth, and also just get to understand what your family at the time thought about your sightings. So stay tuned. We'll continue to talk more with Margaret after the break.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.
Welcome back. I'm still joined by veteran UFO investigator Margaret Fry. Now, Margaret, we've been talking about your July 17th, 1955 incident, which where you saw this unidentified flying object with you and many other witnesses as well. But when you witnessed this incident, how did your parents take it?
Well, my parents were living in Berkshire at the time because my father was a nuclear scientist at Oldham Marston Atomic Station. And they used to only come down at weekends, but when they did come down, my father was quite determined I hadn't seen anything. I must have mistaken the sun. And of course I explained to him what had happened. And my mother went out and she said, I'm going to buy the local paper, because she said Margaret's a very factual sort of person. And she said, I know, you know, there's bound to be something in the newspaper. And sure enough, there was. There were all the reports that, you know, other people had seen round about Erith and Upper Belvedere and places like that, you know. The same thing, the same craft, the same time.
So were you able to trace those original newspapers, well, no, the copies of the newspapers from the local library then?
No, yes, the local library did have them to start off with, but then they changed, you know, their location and their building, and I don't remember what happened about it.
Okay. Now, you and your father both saw something strange as well, didn't you? And he
Yes,
told you never
yes.
to talk about it. Just
Yeah,
tell us a bit
shortly
about that.
before he died, about 2 months before he died, we were waiting to cross the road, and suddenly there's exactly the same craft that I saw in 1955 swooped down out of a small cloud, practically touched the road, and then scooped over the houses. And of course, after that, my father had to believe in them.
But he told you never to talk about it, is that
He
right?
did. He didn't want me to talk to the family about it, but I suppose he couldn't help himself. He talked to our neighbour, who was our friend as well, about it very frequently until the time of his death.
I suppose if that had come out, that he'd seen this with you, maybe his job might have been at risk, perhaps?
Maybe his what?
His job may have been at risk?
Oh no, he was long since retired then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, with these objects you've seen, would you say they're remote controlled, perhaps, or?
I would say that the smaller ones are. You know, people have reported very small things, like little discs about a few inches across. I've actually seen one like that. And obviously they're just controlled devices, maybe for something that's high up in above our atmosphere.
And in some of the cases that you've researched, have you witnessed alongside witnesses? You know, are they UFO sighting at the same time?
Oh yes, I've been frequently, particularly in 1978, when we had a flap year in North Kent. You know, people would say, please come immediately, I'm watching so-and-so. And my husband and I would get in the car and race over, and we'd see them with them.
But why you? I mean, why as a UFO investigator are you seeing these objects and other people aren't?
Oh, I think a lot of people do see them. I'm not the only one.
Yeah, but it just seems that in a lot of your research, you know, you've documented in your book, Link to the Stars, lots of, you know, cases where you've witnessed these objects, yet, you know, I've not, or other people haven't. You know, what makes you different, do you think?
I never think like that. I just think I was in the right place at the right time, and that's it.
So, in some
I don't think I've been selected in any way, if that's
Sorry.
what you're meaning.
Yes, that's what I mean. I mean, is there, you know, some sort of selection process, perhaps?
No, I don't think so. I think that they just pick on people, you know, just by chance.
So, in some of the cases that you've researched then, would you say the media's treated you pretty fairly? I mean, have you had, you know, fair media coverage with some of the cases that you've researched then?
Well, I will say that the media, on the whole, have never made fun of anything I've given them. They've reported quite factually and left it at that. Sometimes at the tail end, because they're scared of being classed as lunatics themselves, they might say, make some little funny little comment at the last sentence, but that's about it.
Now, do you have sympathy for the government when they've covered up a lot of UFO reported cases?
To an extent, if you think of it carefully, there are some people who would panic and who would go over the top, and I suppose they have to take the broad view altogether.
But again, it's strange though, isn't it? You know, our government says that, you know, they know nothing, yet now they're releasing secret files to say, well, look, you know, we've had these for so many years and they've been kept a secret.
Exactly.
So what else do they know?
And they have. I've got letters on file from the government, you know, from the MOD, saying that yes, they know UFOs exist, but as they haven't got the facilities or the money to investigate them in depth, and they're not doing anything as far as they know, anything harmful as far as they know. They leave it at that. That's what they say, and I've got those letters on file.
Okay. And again, a lot of your research, with you being based in Wales, has been Welsh incidents, but again, you know, you covered all over the UK as well, didn't you?
Yes, I did, right up to Scotland. Wherever we got something really interesting, I'd get my poor husband to get out the car and off we'd go. But we used to make it quite fun for ourselves. We used to spend a weekend there or whatever and have a little break and take our dog with us, etc. But yes, we went everywhere.
So your husband at the time, was he quite supportive of your
Oh, my
UFO
husband
research?
saw UFOs with me several times, so there was no, we both knew that they existed.
Okay, so again, he would be the one that would drive you around.
Yeah.
And do you think it would have worked though if you had a sort of an opposing partner?
That's an interesting question, because at the moment I have got one.
But do you find that more debatable?
I think it's fun being able to spar with him about it, you know.
But it must be difficult for you though, someone who's, you know, coming on national TV to say, look, you know, this is something they saw, you know, they're not delusional, this is your truth, there were others there, but to try to say it, to try to, you know, to convey that message across to other people who, you know, come from a very scientific stance to say they cannot exist. I mean, it must be difficult for you sometimes.
No, I just listen to what they have to say, and sometimes they have very valid points, I think, you know, that you've got to take on board.
Even though you witnessed it?
Even though I witnessed it, you know, I've got to take the fact that Einstein's theories, which to date nobody can possibly dispute, and so on.
But for these crafts to be defying gravity, then there's obviously something we don't understand.
Exactly. They must have a technology that can't even think about.
Now, there was one big flap in Wales during 85 and 86.
Yes, that's right.
And I mean, how busy did that kind of flap make you? Because there always are flaps, aren't there, as well?
Whether
of
you
UFOs.
believe it or not, we were out every single day for about 7 months, until my husband said to me, "Can't you tell them to go away? You know, we're tired, we're fed up." But we were always being called out.
Why do you think there are flaps, though?
Well, I would just give it a very prosaic explanation. They're intensively investigating one particular area, and when they're satisfied with that, they move away.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest sort of cases in Wales that you investigated was the Berwyn Mountain.
That's right, yes,
now just
over very many years.
Very briefly, just tell us about the incident.
Well, according to rumours, a UFO was supposed to have crashed on the Berwyn Mountain, and we've never ever found evidence for that, and we've intensively investigated that, my partner in ufology, Scott Felton, and I, over a period of years. But we did discover that a UFO had come down in a very controlled way and stayed on the mountainside for an hour and 3/4, which was very unusual. And then it took off again, and the villagers of Llandernog saw it go away about 11 o'clock at night.
So, I mean, there is, you know, speculation that the military were involved in, you know, the covering up of bodies at the time and of evidence, but you don't buy into that?
That's all speculation, and we've never been able to prove it.
And again, a lot of researchers, as far as I can see, tend to get the wrong mountain, don't they, when it comes to the Berwyn Mountains?
Oh yes, they thoroughly investigated Bronwyn Mountain, because that's where the, you know, all the action, or they thought, took place, and nobody ever thought of going to the Berwyn Mountain. where in fact the UFO that came down in a controlled way was on the mountain Seven Kosh, if I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it correctly in the Welsh way, was where this craft landed and stayed on the ground for so long.
So,
Stephen Cock, would it be?
It could have been, yeah, it could have been. I think actually it was. With your work now, I mean, obviously you're pretty much semi-retired from ufology, but I suppose you're always on, looking into up-to-date cases just sort of through the internet, are you? I mean, how do you keep up to date now? What's going on?
Oh no, I don't they come to me. People always refer it to me. Fortunately, the press all know about me, and they tell me about it. And if I find it really interesting, then I ring my pals and I say, come on, let's go and investigate it. I do still do some investigations.
What are the sort of most recent investigations you've done?
The most recent one I did was with a UFO that came down over a shop in that belonged to Bodelwyddan Castle in North Wales. And it hovered over for about 20 minutes in just a few hundred feet off the ground. And all the people coming and going to the shop, they were all standing outside and watching it. And then I had independent witnesses from the coast seeing it when it went up higher, and they were able to see it actually over Bodelwyddan.
Margaret Fry, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, you're welcome.
Stay tuned, we'll be right back after this short break.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.